Get on your knees. Get on your knees.
In South Carolina, a family is taken hostage as part of a brazen bank robbery. Police track down the suspects, but they can't seem to keep the leader in jail. The FBI and police in 4 states are determined to stop him, but the armed fugitive is relentless in his struggle to stay free.
When a bank teller arrived at her parents' home, the gunmen were already there. The robbers held her family hostage and forced her to empty a bank vault. If she didn't comply, she could lose everyone she loved. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Even when authorities caught the crime's mastermind, they couldn't hold him. Soon he was back in action, with the FBI once again on his trail.
The Savannah River marks the state line separating Augusta, Georgia, from North Augusta, South Carolina. On the South Carolina side, on a Friday afternoon in October 1995, Parker and Brenda Shaw returned home with their granddaughter, Brianna. They watched Brianna on Friday afternoons when her mother, Amy Shaw, worked late as a bank teller. Parker tried to open the garage, but the remote door opener wasn't working.
I'll open the door and you guys can come in, okay? All right.
Not knowing someone was there, he went in the house to open the garage from inside.
Shut the door. Shut the door. Get down there. All right, all right.
The 2 intruders quickly bound Parker with duct tape,
Put your hands in front of you. That's good. That's good.
then forced him into the bedroom. Outside, Brenda got tired of waiting. With Brianna, she began to walk towards the front door. When the garage finally opened,
Come on, lady, let's go inside. This ain't no game, lady. Let's go. I ain't playing with you. Let's go. Come on, move it. Move it. Let's go. Come on. Upstairs, lady. Let's go. Let's go.
the man forced Brenda into the bedroom where her husband was being held by the other 2 intruders.
Look, lady. Cooperate. Nobody gets hurt, okay?
The gunman stole money and credit cards from the frightened couple. But then the one who was clearly the leader announced he had really come for the Shaw's daughter, Amy, and the money at her bank. They would wait for her. The armed intruders held the Shaws for more than an hour.
Oh, lady, back. Sit down. Sit down.
At 7 p.m., the lead gunman ordered Brenda into the living room,
All right. Okay.
leaving one of his men to guard her husband and granddaughter. At the front window, they watched for Amy. They knew exactly when she was to arrive. For Amy Shaw, it was an ordinary Friday evening. The gunman ordered Brenda to the front door. Usually it was unlocked, so Amy was surprised she couldn't get in. She knew right away something was wrong.
Get over there. Get over there.
The leader grabbed Amy. He told her he had been watching them for some time. He knew their schedules, when they were vulnerable, everything. He began interrogating Amy about the security system at the bank.
And you have them? Do you have the code?
From her training, she knew it was best to comply with the demands.
Is it on the timer? Is the vault on the
No,
timer?
there's no time.
She said she could get him into the bank, but it took 2 codes to open the vault, and she only had 1.
You ready? All right, don't try anything funny. All right, turn around.
He said they'd deal with that when they got there, and warned her if anything went wrong, her family could get hurt.
Okay. All right. Okay,
The leader
set up.
announced he was taking Amy to the bank
Me and I are gonna go for a little ride.
and told his men to wait for his call.
You guys got everything under control. Any false moves, take care of them. Let's go. Come on. Come on. Sorry.
Her parents and little girl could only hope that she would not be harmed. As they left, the kidnapper removed his mask to avoid looking suspicious in public. At gunpoint, Amy drove across the Savannah River from South Carolina into Georgia and to the bank where she worked.
Take care of the camera. All the cameras tilted down.
The gunman ordered her to circle the bank slowly so he could check if a cleaning crew was inside. Pulling up next to the automated teller machine, Amy hoped to catch the kidnapper's image on its security camera. Deciding it was clear, he ordered her to drive to the back door. He told her that when they got inside, she was to explain all of her actions so he would know she wasn't setting off any alarms, and warned her again not to make any mistakes. Inside, she showed him the alarm she could disable.
Get over there. Get over there.
I don't have the entire.
But as she had explained, she could not open the main vault door alone.
Open the vault.
She had one combination, but a coworker had the other.
It's not gonna open.
The kidnapper reminded Amy that her family would remain safe only if he could get inside the vault.
Get to the phone.
At the Shaw residence, the intruders moved the family to the living room where they could watch the front. The Shaws hoped it would end peacefully, but the men seemed to grow agitated, their guns at the ready. The handgun had gone off accidentally.
Somebody come over here, man. What's wrong? Go.
The intruders worried the sound had alerted neighbors. And their concern mounted as another car pulled up to the house.
Somebody's coming. Get over by the door.
It was Amy's brother-in-law and sister, and their young daughter arriving for a visit. They were taken as soon as they entered the house.
Oh, here we go. Let's go, lady. Come on. Come on. No, tie him up over there. Shut
The
up.
gunman
Not moving.
now had 6 hostages. At the bank, the lead assailant ordered Amy to call her coworker for the second combination.
Hello? Hey, this is Amy.
When Amy asked, the coworker hesitated, not understanding what was happening. Amy tried to explain that her family was being held hostage.
Get me the combination.
The gunman took over, threatening to come get the code himself.
Okay, just calm down.
Fearing for Amy's safety, the coworker gave her the second combination.
Open it.
The gunman made sure the woman stayed on the line so she couldn't call police. Amy nervously punched in the second part of the combination. But the vault remained locked.
You gave me the wrong combination. Make it work or else.
She carefully tried again.
All right.
And the door opened.
All right, yeah. Get the phone, get the phone.
The robber had Amy make sure the co-worker stayed on the line.
Which one of the dot packs?
And he ordered her to point out which bins held bait money that was sequentially numbered or rigged with exploding die packs. He left that cash alone. After the robber loaded up the money, he ordered Amy to call her parents' home on a second line.
Come on, get up, get the phone.
The leader ordered his men
yo.
to take care of things at the house, then leave and page him when they were clear.
And get out.
He took off with more than $86,000. Once he was gone, Amy set off the alarm to bring help. Then, frantic with worry, she called home. Her mother warned her not to call police. The armed men were still there. But it was too late. She already had.
Mom, don't hang up. Mom,
The gunman checked the terrified family's bindings. It seemed like they were going to leave. But one hesitated.
Look, I'm out of here, man. Let's go.
There were 6 witnesses to the crime.
Yo, come on, man. Let's go.
At 8 p.m., Richmond County Sheriff's officers responded to the bank in Georgia and learned the real crime was across the river. The lead investigator was Kenneth Booz.
We relayed all the information that we had to the Edgefield County Sheriff's Office and told them that there was a possibility that the family was still being held hostage.
Edgefield County, South Carolina Sheriff's investigator Don Bullock got the call.
We had a family hostage situation. Respond was code 1. That's everything you got, fast as you can get there.
The family had called, saying the gunman had left, but the deputies had to be sure.
Sheriff's office, open up. Sir, step back.
The deputies checked the house for the intruders. They were gone.
They were safe. Nobody was hurt. Physically, they weren't hurt, but mentally, they had to be shattered. They really went through an ordeal.
The Shaws described the men as best they could. They never saw faces and knew only they were African-American males.
Look, you still got Amy, all right?
The men were armed and aggressive.
Come on, man. Let's go. What you doing?
One had held a gun to Parker's head,
Look, I'm out of here, man. Let's go.
but the shot never came. When the assailants left, the family freed themselves and waited for police to arrive. Parker explained that the gunman took the keys to his son-in-law's car and described what they were wearing. Deputies put out an APB. As with any bank robbery, the Richmond County authorities notified the FBI. Special Agent Jerry Jones of the Augusta, Georgia resident agency arrived to interview Amy. She described the leader of the group and the direction in which he fled. She said she might have captured an image of him and told Special Agent Jones about the camera on the ATM.
She tried to get him into a position where the camera may take a photograph of him. As it turns out, the camera was activated only when one puts one's card into the machine, so that didn't work.
The cameras inside didn't catch him either. At the North Augusta crime scene, investigator Bullock arrived and was briefed on the search for evidence. Technicians from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division had found oily shoe prints on the garage floor and photographed them for future comparison if suspects were located. From inside the house, technicians recovered a single cartridge from the bullet fired in the living room. It was from a .38 caliber handgun, but had no prints on it. Attempts to recover the assailant's fingerprints elsewhere failed as well, since they had worn gloves throughout the crime. At the top of the driveway, investigators located a vehicle stuck in a ditch.
The two suspects, when they left the house, they were going to take a car, and they got the key from the victims in the house. In their haste to back out of the driveway, they backed into a ditch and could not get the car out of the ditch, so they left on foot.
The technicians recovered foreign fingerprints from the vehicle. More evidence to compare to any later suspects. Nearby, they located several items they believed had been dropped by the fleeing gunman. There were several weapons, including a shotgun and a .357 Magnum. Clothes, masks, and gloves found in the bushes matched what the assailants reportedly had worn. Without the clothes, police didn't have much of a description of the suspects. They updated the already vague APB. 3 African-American males, 2 probably on foot, 1 in a dark blue sedan, armed and considered dangerous. In 1995, South Carolina and Georgia authorities sought 3 masked men who held the Shaw family hostage and robbed a bank. Within an hour of the 911 call, an off-duty deputy was en route to the Shaw house when he heard the revised APB. He spotted 2 men, roughly fitting the description, walking away from the neighborhood where the Shaws lived.
Hey guys, let me talk to you for just a second. Where you guys coming from?
The deputy questioned the pair, according to Sheriff's investigator Don Bullock.
They asked them what they were doing there, and they said, we were up at the church playing basketball, and they had no basketball and no transportation.
Backup soon arrived. The deputies knew the church mentioned had no lights on its basketball court.
And being that time of night, it was dark. The red flags just flew up. It was, he put 2 and 2 together.
If you don't mind, can we just take them back around the corner in your car since I don't have a cage? Come on, guys, we'll just clear you up real quick and that'll be nothing to it.
The young men agreed to go to a police staging area near the Shaw house for further questioning. They were identified as Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe. At the bank, FBI Special Agent Jerry Jones received word of the 2 men in custody.
I elected to leave the bank because the victim teller was comfortable and secure. So I left the bank and went over to South Carolina to interview the 2 suspects.
Jones made it to the police staging area about the same time as the suspects. He and Sheriff's investigator Kenneth Booz knew that with more than one suspect involved, it was best to talk to them separately.
We separated them because most of the time they'll start breaking down, but they'll start wondering what the other suspect has told us. When they start realizing that the other one might be talking, then they want to be the first one to get on the bandwagon and start cooperating.
The men had been unable to give details about the church where they had allegedly been playing basketball. And investigators sensed they were involved in the crime. Special Agent Jones began with Lamarco Roscoe.
You develop a concept of what their greatest fear is, some weakness they may have in their past or their family or something of that sort. And in this particular case, it was fear of the death penalty that got Roscoe's attention.
Jones knew Amy Shaw was safe, but gambled that Roscoe did not. He told him his primary concern was Amy's safety.
I told him that he needed to know that if the third robber killed her, that he would face the electric chair for his complicity in the robbery. So everything I told him was the truth. My primary interest was the safety and welfare of the victim teller. And it is true that had the third robber killed Amy Shaw, they would both have faced the death penalty.
The suspect soon admitted his involvement in the crime. When asked for the name of the leader of the group, he said he only knew him by his first name, Chris, and believed his last name started with a J.
Another law enforcement officer who was familiar with a number of ne'er-do-wells in the Augusta area recognized the name and actually asked if that was in fact Christopher Jaburk, which he replied that it was.
Jones then interviewed the second suspect, Daniel Evans.
I told him that his accomplice had already confessed, and he immediately began to tell me the story of what happened that night. I wanted him to confirm the name of the third suspect without prompting, and he immediately gave up Christopher Jaburk by name.
In talking to Roscoe and Evans, investigators realized the two were obviously the followers, and Jaburk was in charge.
They weren't the masterminds of this bank robbery. They were, in my opinion, they were mastermind stooges. They didn't appear to have much knowledge of what was going on, except for they had been with Jaburk several times in the past few days, looking at different banks, coming up with different plans on how to pull this one off.
When he was finished with the preliminary interviews, Jones learned a pager number had been recovered from one of the suspects. He asked an officer to call the number. When the return call came back, the officer identified himself. The caller said his name was Chris Jaburk. When asked, he said he was 100 miles away in Mount Vernon, Georgia. Jaburk was defensive and asked the officer if he was being accused of something. Then he hung up. Investigators headed for Jaburk's house right away.
As it turns out, law enforcement was very familiar with Christopher Jaburk and knew where the residence was without any prompting.
If he was the lead kidnapper, he now knew police were looking for him. And with a head start and $86,000 in cash, Christopher Jaburk could be anywhere. In October 1995, authorities were seeking Christopher Jaburk, wanted for armed kidnapping and bank robbery. At the request of FBI agents and Richmond County deputies, Jaburk's mother called her son on his cell phone and advised him to come talk to authorities. Around 1 a.m., he arrived with his girlfriend. Although only 19 years old, Jaburk was already on a 5-year probation for burglary and escape from a detention center. The investigators took him in for questioning.
Yeah, we would just like to verify that standard procedure.
His girlfriend agreed to come in too. At the sheriff's department, FBI Special Agent Jerry Jones questioned Jaburk about the kidnapping of the Shaw family and the bank robbery in Georgia.
I got a phone call from my girlfriend.
Jaburk admitted knowing the two confessed gunmen, Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe, but denied any involvement in the crime. He said he was in Mount Vernon, Georgia with his girlfriend and another female friend at the time in question.
Jaburk at first gave the two girls as his alibi, claiming to have gone with one of the girls to pick up the other girl and then come back to Augusta, Georgia, and stated that he was with the two girls the entire day, and even after they arrived back in Augusta, Georgia, they went to a movie together, all three of them.
Temporarily halting the interview, Jones went to talk to the girlfriend and the second friend who had come to the station at the request of investigators.
The two girls, when interviewed, declined to corroborate that alibi.
All right.
The two girls don't back up the story.
That's a lie.
Jaburk quickly tried to come up with a new alibi, according to Richmond County Sheriff's investigator Kenneth Booz.
He said that he couldn't tell us his whereabouts at the time of the robbery because he was involved in some other criminal activity. It was a drug deal in Atlanta, Georgia, according to him.
Two guys named Roscoe and Evans?
Jaburk's new story didn't convince anyone. Federal authorities charged him with 6 counts, including conspiracy, carjacking, kidnapping, and armed bank robbery.
After further interviews with Jaburk, he finally started cooperating and told us that he was involved in this robbery and kidnapping, and that he was actually the one that did it, but he wasn't the mastermind, that he was involved with some large-scale criminal organization, and that he couldn't reveal any more information because he was afraid for his family.
You decide you want to tell the truth?
It was another obvious lie by a man desperately trying to protect himself. Jaburk's partners, Daniel Evans and Lamarco Roscoe, pleaded guilty to state charges of burglary, kidnapping, and armed robbery. They were sentenced to 30 years in prison. Christopher Jaburk was prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Richard Goolsby.
The only problem with this case was that there was no scientific evidence. It seemed like we hit a dead end every time we got a lab report as to any fingerprints or footprints. None of them matched Jaburk. But in terms of the quality of the evidence, we were very fortunate that the teller victim and her family members were just incredibly good witnesses. They helped win the case.
Jaburk was convicted on all 6 counts, which made him eligible for a sentence of life in prison without parole. While awaiting sentencing, Jaburk was held at a small county jail. There, he met another inmate. Jerome Frierson Bay, also a bank robber, was awaiting trial on 3 armed robberies. At the time, the jail was undergoing construction to expand the facility.
That's that one guard out that door.
There was plenty of time to plan an escape.
I think I seen that right around noon or whatnot.
On March 27th, 1996, a guard on routine patrol noticed an open door. A head count revealed 2 inmates were missing: Christopher Jaburk and Jerome Frierson Bay. Construction workers had seen 2 prisoners running toward a wooded area near the prison. Search teams combed the woods, but no one spotted the men. The search moved into the area's denser forest and swamps. And helicopters flew grid patterns overhead. Still, nothing. Authorities believe the pair might have had help on the outside. Police tried to seal the perimeter, putting up roadblocks to stop and check vehicles. But the 2 escapees were nowhere to be found. Jaburk's escape posed a danger to the Shaw family, who had testified at his trial.
We needed to contact the victims' family members and let them know about it, and to take other precautions that you would in a situation like this.
While the search continued, Edgefield County, South Carolina deputies began spot checks on the Shaw family to make sure they were safe.
I was convinced that at some point in time he would come back to the mother. We established a surveillance, 24-hour surveillance of the mother and the girlfriend.
Authorities watched, but Jaburk never showed. Then, FBI Special Agent Doug Fender developed a surprising lead.
Myself and other local law enforcement officials were conducting a separate auto theft investigation in the Augusta, Georgia area concerning the theft of a green Mitsubishi Eclipse. We were able to identify an individual in jail who indicated that he had transferred this stolen vehicle to one of the female associates of Jaburk.
Agents interviewed the young woman at the hotel where she worked. Initially, she denied any knowledge of the jailbreak, but Special Agent Fender tried to get her to cooperate.
This job is mainly about talking to people. When you put all the fancy forensic techniques and those sorts of things aside, probably the success of most agents is based upon their ability to solicit information from individuals and make them tell them something that they probably don't want to share with you.
When she realized she herself could go to jail, she admitted helping in the escape. She said that she and Jaburk's girlfriend delivered a stolen car to a parking lot near a wooded area by the prison.
After he escaped from the jail, he just got into the getaway car and made his escape with Frierson Bay. They, by prearrangement, went to a clandestine campsite which the girls had laid out for Jaburk and Frierson Bay with clothes and water and that type of thing.
The escapees easily found the stashed clothes, food, and weapons. They were free, but they needed money. The armed bank robbers knew exactly what to do. In 1996, escaped prisoners Christopher Jaburk and Jerome Frierson Bay fled a county jail in a stolen car. FBI Special Agent Jerry Jones was after them.
We began a search for the stolen vehicle, and we sent out an APB to all surrounding states regarding the description of the vehicle.
The day after the escape, A car matching that description pulled up to a bank in Lumberton, North Carolina, 220 miles northeast of the jail.
Right, just take the money.
Two men in hats, gloves, and sunglasses robbed the bank at gunpoint. The employees knew to cooperate, so no one would get hurt.
Come on, man, let's go.
Lumberton police and North Carolina FBI agents responded to the scene. They determined $4,500 had been taken from the bank's vault. Security cameras were rolling during the robbery. The images were too blurry to make out faces, but the descriptions given by employees resembled Jaburk and Frierson Bay. And the car they left in matched the one the fugitives had.
I'll be there. Thanks.
The car was the best lead for Special Agent Doug Fender.
This vehicle we had entered into NCIC, and we discovered or was notified by the Lumberton police officials that that car had in fact been recovered in Lumberton, North Carolina.
An hour after that car was found, agents received a report of a home invasion and carjacking in Lumberton and went to interview the victims. The couple said they had been working on their car in the garage when two armed men burst in, demanding the keys to the car and a change of clothes. Then left as quickly as they had arrived. When shown a photo lineup, the couple positively identified Jaburk and Frierson Bay.
And that's the guy that came up on the left side.
So we had a second vehicle, and we had an APB put out on that car. It was spotted in Raleigh, North Carolina. Jaburk and Frierson Bay robbed a bank there.
The fugitives were heading north, fast.
We knew that Frierson Bay had relatives in the New York, New Jersey area, so we suspected that to be the ultimate destination.
Tracking the pair became a matter of following a trail of bank robberies.
What we noticed was a trend of bank robberies that were occurring up and down the I-95 corridor. At the time we were tracking Frierson Bay and Jaburk, we suspected them in approximately 11 to 14 bank robberies up and down the East Coast.
In some of the robberies, men matching the description of one or both of the fugitives were captured on surveillance video.
We were able, through photographic surveillance and also witness identification, to establish that the two of them were together at least until they reached the Fredericksburg, Virginia area.
Agents focused their search in New Jersey, where Frierson Bay had family.
Based upon two tips that were called into a nationally televised program, Frierson Bay was tracked to a motel located in the Paterson, New Jersey area. A surveillance by members of the New Jersey FBI office was established. Once these agents were able to establish that Frierson Bay might be staying in the motel room, they remained on the premises.
If he were inside and armed, approaching the door would be dangerous. It was decided to wait him out. Soon they would learn the fugitive would not go down without a struggle. After two escaped prisoners committed a string of armed bank robberies, agents believed they had tracked one of them, Jerome Frierson Bay, to a New Jersey motel. After several hours, they spotted the fugitive. He went to his car as the SWAT team moved in.
Police, get out of the car! Get out of the car! We see your hands! Get out of the car!
He locked himself inside. But that wasn't going to stop him, according to FBI Special Agent Doug Fender.
After several commands by members of the FBI SWAT team, Frierson Bay still refused to come out of the vehicle, at which time one of the SWAT team members was able to break the glass with the butt of his MP5 submachine gun. Frierson Bay was then forcibly removed from the vehicle.
From his car, the SWAT team recovered a loaded .40 caliber Glock semi-automatic handgun, along with $1,500 in stolen cash. A search of the motel revealed no sign of his partner, Christopher Jaburk. Jerome Frierson Bay pleaded guilty to 10 bank robberies and was sentenced to 19 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He claimed he had no idea where Jaburk was. Finding Christopher Jaburk remained a priority for Georgia FBI Special Agent Jerry Jones.
We believe that Jaburk and Frierson Bay parted company, and Jaburk began his journey back to Georgia. I always believed that Jaburk would come back home.
The FBI announced a $10,000 reward and had begun the process of adding him to their 10 most wanted fugitives list when a media report generated a promising lead.
Just a moment.
A caller said she believed the fugitive was staying with her minister in Atlanta, though the minister didn't know Jaburk was a criminal. The caller spotted Jaburk when she went to check on the minister's house after the elderly man entered the hospital with heart trouble. An arrest team staked out the residence, dressed as yard workers. On May 9th, 1996, a vehicle pulled into the minister's driveway. When the driver emerged, agents visually identified him.
What's going on?
It was Jaburk.
Finishing up the yard work for the old man?
The arrest team moved in.
Hands up, FBI! Hands up! Hands up! Hey, what's going on?
Surprised and cornered, Jaburk did not try to run. When they searched him, agents found $2,000 in his sock.
Hey! What's this? What is it? What you hey for? What is this?
He was returned to jail, again to await sentencing for the Augusta kidnapping bank robbery.
When Jaburk was apprehended in Atlanta, we thought the pressure was off and everybody took a big sigh of relief and went home for a short period of time.
Jaburk was not giving up. Six weeks after his recapture, he once again broke out of his cell.
When Jaburk escaped and I received the telephone call, I responded to the jail to try to secure whatever evidence was there. We found a partial saw blade. When he got through the window of the jail, there's a huge double fence around the confinement area covered with concertina wire. So he had to get over that fence and over the concertina wire.
Agents searched the grounds and the fence topped with the razor-sharp wire. They recovered shreds of a prison uniform.
And we actually found traces of blood there, so we knew he was injured, but he was on foot.
They hoped he hadn't gotten far.
So we began to trail him through this rural wooded area, which also leads to a swampy area probably around 10 square miles. We immediately brought in tracking dogs, which led us directly to the wooded area. So we knew the route of escape that he was trying to accomplish. As old as I was, out with the younger people going through the woods, and we tracked through there for days, for several days, without finding him. I then decided that we needed some electronic gear to try to trace him. So I contacted the Atomic Energy Commission site over in South Carolina, and they provided me with a helicopter equipped with an infrared system that's a heat-seeking system.
They searched dozens of square miles with the highly sensitive equipment. But somehow, Jaburk managed to avoid detection and was still on the run. Four days later, an off-duty sheriff's deputy in nearby Appling, Georgia, thought he spotted the fugitive. The man was limping as if injured. The deputy called the station, and other officers spread out to search the area.
He was tracked into a wooded area right behind one of the grammar schools and apprehended.
Right there. Hands up.
Christopher Jaburk was again in custody. 2 weeks later, he was finally sentenced for robbing the Augusta Bank and kidnapping Amy Shaw and her family. Assistant U.S. Attorney Richard Goolsby fought to keep Jaburk off the streets forever.
Our role is to try to protect the community. That's one of our important responsibilities. So we were concerned and felt like that we should ask for the maximum in Jaburk's case. And fortunately, the court imposed the maximum, life in prison, plus 5 years.
Jaburk was ordered to serve his term at the federal prison in Leavenworth, Kansas. Without the possibility of parole, his only chance to be free again would be to escape. Several weeks into his sentence, Jaburk was caught trying to do exactly that by hanging on underneath a prison laundry truck.
Come on out now. Come on. Nice and slow.
I see you. Come on.
Nice and slow. Come on. Get out of there.
He had almost made it to the front gate. Jaburk was transferred to the maximum security federal penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia.
Even if Harry Houdini was in the Atlanta federal pen, he wouldn't be able to get out, and Christopher Jaburk is no Harry Houdini.
No one doubts Jaburk will try again. But now, he is held in one of the most secure prisons in America. A string of lethal carjackings terrorize the Washington, D.C. area. Ballistics reveal that it's the work of a serial killer who tries to run over one victim with his own car. The FBI and police set a clever trap, but the killer insists on a violent shootout.
In the early 90s, a serial killer stalked lone victims in the dead of night. His hunting ground, the suburbs of Washington, D.C. His target, anyone who owned a car. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The gunman was as elusive as he was deadly. He struck quickly and without mercy. Now the FBI must follow the twisted path of a killer wherever it leads.
November 13th, 1991. Silver Spring, Maryland, a suburb north of Washington, D.C. Montgomery County Police respond to a report of shots fired at a car dealership. Officers discover the body of a woman shot in the chest and forehead.
Call the medical examiner.
And another gunshot victim nearby.
It's got a pulse!
The man is breathing but unconscious. Paramedics rush him to the hospital. Montgomery County Homicide Detective Ed Day coordinates his department's swift response to the slaying.
You saturate the case as fast as you can, work on it as fast as you can, get as much information as fast as you can, and try to resolve it as fast as you can. Unfortunately, the homicides, time is terrible. The more time goes by, the less your odds are that you're going to have a satisfactory conclusion to the investigation.
Investigators learn the two victims are janitors. They were cleaning the building that night and would have come outside around 10 p.m. to dump the garbage. The detectives work to determine a motive for the attack.
You don't overlook the obvious. You have a shooting like this at a car lot. Is that a possible motive for the killing, the theft of a car? Of course, had representatives from the auto dealer come out, do an inventory. There was no vehicles missing. There was no property missing from the inside of the establishment.
Investigators locate the victims' car keys nearby and determine neither of their personal vehicles are missing. Robbery does not seem to be the motive.
Nothing was taken. They had money on them. There wasn't a single thing missing.
Are you Mr. Escobar's attendant physician?
Yes, I am.
Tell me about him.
With almost no evidence to go on, Detective Day hopes to learn more from the critically wounded man.
As you can see, he's intubated. He's also in a coma, and he's just not responding.
We do that with any kind of a shooting that's potentially fatal. There's a rule in law that a dying declaration does not have to be corroborated. It's not hearsay because if the person knows he's going to die, he's assumed to be able to be telling the truth. So if you can get a statement from somebody in really serious circumstances, and it's always a very, very powerful piece of evidence.
I got to check on him.
But the victim dies 9 days later without ever regaining consciousness. During the autopsy, the medical examiner recovers the only piece of physical evidence, the bullets that killed the victims. At the Maryland State Police Crime Lab, ballistics expert Joe Capera examines the evidence to determine if there was more than one shooter.
There was a microscopic comparison done to determine if these bullets were fired from the same gun. And indeed, as a conclusion to these examinations, I concluded that these bullets were fired from the same gun.
Examining the scratch patterns on the bullets, Capera determines the make and model of the murder weapon.
I was able to ascertain, first of all, the caliber of the gun, which was a .357, and then through the measurements of the unique landing groove areas, I was able to ascertain that it was a Ruger .357.
With no obvious motive for the slayings, detectives explore the victims' personal lives for clues.
If you work inside out, you try to find out if these people had any enemies, if there was any triangle, thwarted lover or something like that. These things take you in 100 different directions, and you just have to take care of one thing at a time. You eliminate something and you move on to the next issue, and you just go from there.
Detectives find nothing in the victims' backgrounds that could have led to their murders. Since investigators found the victims' car keys near the bodies, they decide to re-examine the slayings as a failed car theft. With that possible motive in mind, detectives speculate how the crime might have occurred.
They were cleaning. The business was closed for the night. They were taking the trash out.
Hey! Nice and easy, just throw me your
Detectives suspect the gunman demanded the victim's car keys.
Here, just do right here. Don't hurt me, okay?
Based on the position of the woman's body relative to her keys, they believe she tried to run.
And you have to make the assumption that he lost control of the situation and decided to kill the two of them before he identified what car belonged to them. He escalated an attempt theft into a murder for no good reason.
With little evidence to go on, the case grows cold. Then, 3 months later, investigators respond to the scene of another homicide. They find the body of psychology professor Dr. Shaheen Hastrudi lying in a parking lot in Bethesda, Maryland. Unable to locate her car, detectives believe she was the victim of a fatal carjacking. Noting the lack of blood spatter evidence near the body, they suspect Hastrudi's assailant shot her while she was still inside her car. Through interviews with her colleagues, authorities determined Dr. Hastrudi left her office around 8 p.m.
She's obviously accosted. At some point gets in her car.
Get in the car! Start the car. Start the car. Don't touch her.
Once she's already in the car, she's shot. She's taken out of the car, dumped on the lot, and the suspect steals her car. Gunshot wound to the head, large caliber, no witnesses.
The only solid evidence is a pair of bullets recovered from the victim's body. Investigators send the bullets to the Maryland State Police Crime Lab to compare them with the bullets from the double homicide. It is a match. The two crimes are connected.
We got a couple of crimes here.
Homicide detectives begin examining unsolved cases involving similar circumstances. One detective recalls a recent homicide which occurred a month before Hastrudi was killed.
Very similar to these crimes.
That victim was also shot in the head with a large caliber gun. As in the Silver Spring double homicide, responding officers found the victim's keys near his body. But this victim didn't own a car, which leads investigators to question whether car theft was the motive, or if the case is even connected to the other shootings.
But we said, this is looking like they're definitely linked for some reason.
Let's see if we can get some ballistics on it. Let's get some ballistics on it.
So authorities locate the bullet from that case and send it to be tested. Ballistics expert Joe Capera compares the bullets from the 4 homicides.
I did a cross-comparison examination to the previous bullets. And as a result of that examination, I found out that all the bullets were fired from the same weapon.
So we're starting to see a pattern here, guys. We got
Investigators have connected the 4 homicides through the ballistic evidence and an apparent car theft motive, but they cannot understand why the killer chose to murder his victims.
None of these people were armed. Stature-wise, none of these people I thought were particularly a threat to the suspect. 2 possibilities: that he had lost control of them and felt the best way to regain control of the situation was to kill him, or there was some psychological reason that he didn't like these particular people.
Detectives believe they are dealing with an extremely violent and unpredictable criminal and suspect he may still be in the area.
Montgomery County was his basis of operation. That's where he felt most comfortable. That's where he did all his murders. That's where he did his most risky business. That's where he laid in wait for people. So it was obvious he had some strong tie to Montgomery County.
Investigators suspect he will strike again and hope to stop him before he does. But they have no clues that can help identify him.
These are looking fantastic.
And the killer's weapon is the only thing that can connect him to the murders.
The best evidence we got is the bullets. And if we can get him and get the gun, then we definitely have a very, very strong case.
Now this one came out of...
Authorities don't want to give the killer a reason to destroy his gun, and with it their only evidence.
We're gonna make another mistake. We're gonna propose...
So they decide to keep the ballistics match away from the media.
If we supply the information to the press that all the bullets came from the same gun, be a good likelihood that he would either dispose of the weapon, or he would, in worst case scenario, obtain a different weapon and keep committing the crime.
More than a week after the Hstrudi killing, a man wearing a stocking mask and latex gloves robs a bank in Chantilly, Virginia. The bank's video security system captures his image. A witness tells the FBI that the bank robber fled in a late model white vehicle and gives them the license plate number. The description of the getaway car matches the vehicle stolen from Hstrudi, attracting the attention of Montgomery County detectives. But the license plate is not Hstrudi's. Investigators trace the plate and discover it had been stolen from a vehicle in Annandale, Virginia. For detectives, this leaves open the possibility that Hstrudi's car was used in the bank robbery. The Montgomery County Task Force, which now includes agents from the FBI, requests copies of the bank's surveillance tapes to learn what they can about the robber. Investigators watch the crime unfold and notice the robber is carrying a revolver of the same make and caliber used in the 4 homicides. They think he could be the killer. The footage is the best lead they have in identifying a suspect, according to FBI Special Agent Robert Coffey.
We had a great piece of video that actually showed the individual, the handgun. That picture was actually put on the news locally and regionally to try to see if we could spark some interest as far as someone identifying him.
Investigators also release information that their suspect, the money he stole, and the vehicle he was driving may be covered in red dye.
do anything, a phone call, anything. I'm gonna shoot somebody.
The teller managed to slip die packs into the bag of money. And a die pack is a device that once it goes through the door of the bank, it's electronically activated. There's a timer on it that gives a person a little bit of time to get away from the bank, and then it explodes, spewing this terrible red dye. It stains. It's very difficult to get off. It gets on the money, and it will not come off the money. It takes a while to get it off you personally.
5 days after the bank robbery, police in Northern Virginia find an abandoned car bearing the stolen plates reported by the witness. A check of the vehicle identification number proves that it is Astrudi's car. The officer peers inside, examining the interior.
We had the red dye stains in it from the dye packs from the bank. We had proof positive that it had been used in the bank robbery.
Officers impound the vehicle and transport it to the police garage for processing. Technicians find bloodstains inside the car and collect samples as evidence. But they do not find anything that can identify the killer. Lab examiners extract DNA from the blood evidence and compare it to Astrudi's. It is a match. Finally, investigators are able to look at the various crimes and understand their suspect's overall plan.
It's gelled into something that makes a little bit of sense. You went from a situation where you had a whole bunch of motives that really didn't make sense to now a concrete motive. This person is killing people to steal cars to commit bank robberies.
Although authorities now understand why the suspect is murdering innocent people, they have no clue who he is. Investigators face the nearly impossible challenge of identifying and catching a ruthless gunman before he kills again. The FBI and Maryland's Montgomery County Police are hunting a killer who has already committed 4 homicides, as well as a bank robbery. Several FBI agents are part of the task force pursuing the gunman, including Special Agent Robert Coffey.
One of the main roles of the FBI, specifically in this type of a crime, is that we work with many different agencies to corral all of the investigators and bring forth the information in one kind of a think tank.
This multi-agency approach is an invaluable investigative resource for Montgomery County homicide detective Ed Day.
When you start working with multiple jurisdictions on different cases, well, the more jurisdictions are involved, the more jurisdictions have an interest, the more assets you can draw from.
The task force now understands their suspect's crime pattern. He steals a person's car at gunpoint, killing his victim, then uses the vehicle in a bank robbery. Investigators continue to look for past unsolved cases that involved a similar pattern.
Nothing occurs in a vacuum. Somebody doesn't just start killing people, so that's when we really started doing the research.
They identify an incident that occurred in their county almost a year earlier.
Is this your car? No, it's not my car.
Our victim was a maintenance man, an Hispanic male.
Give me your keys.
He was accosted by a white male carrying a large caliber dark handgun.
Where's your car?
When the masked gunman asked for the victim's car keys, the man claimed he didn't own a car.
Oh,
The suspect demanded to know which car belonged to him. He was told to turn around and face away from the suspect, get down on his knees, and put his hand behind his head.
Where's your car? Where is your car?
Our victim at that time felt quite certain that he was going to be executed.
This better be your
Suspect fired 3 shots. One of the shots hit him in the forearm.
The victim managed to flee down an alley and hide behind a bush.
And spent some minutes there waiting for the situation to calm down.
After 10 minutes, the victim returned to the street and waved down the first car he saw, hoping for assistance. To his horror, it was the gunman. An alert neighbor had called police. The victim's life was spared. The following day, a witness reported seeing a masked gunman leaving the scene of a bank robbery in Centerville, Virginia. Police later recovered the getaway vehicle and determined it was the car stolen from the maintenance man. Investigators examined the evidence gathered at the scene of the carjacking. All they have is a bullet fragment that was lodged in the victim's arm. Ballistics expert Joe Capera.
One does not necessarily need the whole bullet as long as the fragment that is left that he is examining has enough ballistic evidence on it that he can use.
He tests the fragment against the other recovered bullets to determine if that case is connected to their current investigation. The bullet fragment matches, but the task force is still no closer to identifying their suspect.
The lab's not getting anything out of these. I mean, these cars are...
With little hard evidence, investigators study the killer's behavior as exhibited through his actions, searching for clues to his identity.
This guy...
Authorities examine the newly linked case and determine he is unusually bold and cocky.
When the investigators got together and discussed the commitment level of this individual to stay at a crime scene for 10 minutes waiting for a witness to come back, raised our level of concern about the subject himself.
He's not in a big hurry. He feels pretty comfortable that the police aren't going to be there anytime soon.
Investigators also believe the suspect has a quick-tempered, vengeful personality.
He's very upset with his victim. He's decided that he has been himself wronged in some way, and he's going to make him pay for it.
But authorities cannot understand why the suspect uses what appears to be an unnecessary level of violence during the carjackings.
It does not make sense to kill somebody in the least risky part of the crime. The biggest risk he's taken is when he goes into those banks, as far as getting captured, being identified, or running into any real obstacles. Taking these people, innocent people off in the middle of the night in a ground of his own choosing where he can isolate them. I mean, he's safer at that location than he is at anywhere else and anything else he does. It just doesn't make sense why he chose to kill these people.
Their suspect is not only dangerously disturbed, but also clever.
Yeah, we'll just pull in here. See.
One of the more interesting parts of the MO that this individual used was the number of jurisdictions through which he perpetrated his crimes.
He exploits the fact that no single police department can readily see his entire crime pattern.
We have a carjacking in one jurisdiction. We have a stolen tag from a second jurisdiction. We have a bank robbery in a third jurisdiction. And then we have the car abandoned in a fourth jurisdiction.
The gunman's efforts to stymie police do not stop there. Each time he abandons a stolen car, he leaves it unlocked with the keys in plain view.
One of the difficult parts of recovering the vehicles following the robberies is that they were being driven by other people. By leaving the vehicle with the keys in it, The vehicles were then subsequently restolen, leaving the vehicles to be restolen, destroyed whatever forensic evidence would have been left behind. So the only thing we had to match all of the crimes was the forensic evidence from the ballistics.
Investigators continue to look for additional unsolved carjackings in which the vehicle was later used in a bank robbery. They identify a case that occurred within miles of the other thefts.
A woman was walking out of a doctor's office and realized that she was being followed. She turned to try to go back to the doctor's office, but was confronted by the individual and then asked for her keys. They walked over to the car.
Come on, come on, come on. Start it. Start the car. Start
The
the
gunman
car.
forced the
Start the
frightened
car.
woman to start her car.
And upon starting the vehicle, had her get out and kneel down next to a wall.
No. On your knees. Get your hands up. There you go.
Upon kneeling down, he had her wait there for a short period of time.
She described it as 30 or 40 seconds passed. You have to wonder is how much of that time did he spend thinking about whether or not he was going to shoot her. She was very compliant, did everything she was told to do right when she was told to do it. That might have saved her.
The next day, her vehicle was used in a bank robbery. The investigators wonder why their suspect allowed this woman to live, yet killed the others. They come up with several theories.
The fact that she was a Caucasian female might have had something to do with it. He might have had harbored some malice towards Hispanic people or foreign people, or it could be something simple about he lost control in those situations. In fact, the best way to gain control was to kill him.
The task force has little to work with, but is determined to go on the offensive.
Now we're trying to figure out how can we get ahead of him? How can we be in a position where we can be waiting for him when he does something? Or we can be prepared to mobilize very quickly with the resources necessary to get him.
The investigators focus on the one aspect of the suspect's crime pattern that they can anticipate.
We could not predict when a carjacking would take place. They were too random. We did, however, know that following the carjacking, we would have a bank robbery.
If authorities can only predict which banks he will rob or where he will be traveling, they might have a chance to catch him. A masked gunman strikes again and again in suburban Maryland, just north of the nation's capital. He shoots his victims while stealing their cars. Which he later uses to rob banks.
Hey guys, I got some photos of the bank.
In the spring of 1992, the FBI and Montgomery County Police analyzed their suspect's habits in hopes of trapping him.
Identify why this guy's picking these banks. You go ahead and stick him up on the
Homicide Detective Ed Day.
We had people take aerial photographs of every crime scene and the different escape routes and things of that nature, trying to find some logical pattern to what he was doing, something that would maybe give us a clue. What are consistencies? What are inconsistencies? Is there anything like that that we can use to our advantage to foretell what he might do next?
On the surface, the list of crime scenes appears random. But a closer look by investigators reveals all the banks he robbed share a single trait.
Everywhere he went, he had access to a major roadway that would take him pretty quickly to a thoroughfare like 495 or 270 or something like that.
The task force shifts their focus from predicting where the suspect will strike next to catching him when he makes his escape after a bank robbery. They decide they will cast a dragnet on all highway exit ramps in the area. FBI Special Agent Robert Coffey.
We developed a plan where we would cast a net using all of the jurisdictions, law enforcement within the Washington area, to where once the bank robbery were to take place, he would have to pass through some points of the net.
Meeting with officers from every police department in the area, the task force details their plan. They will watch for any carjacking reports resembling their suspect's MO. Officers from each jurisdiction will then prepare for a quick response if a bank is subsequently robbed. They will immediately stake out pre-assigned highway exit ramps targeting the stolen car.
Once he's carjacked the vehicles, we'll implement the plan.
There was enough support at each particular location that he could be followed. We could bring to bear enough additional manpower to make a stop of our choosing and, of course, effect an arrest if we were lucky enough to spot him.
Ready to cast their net, investigators wait for the suspect to steal a car.
You're all key players in the plan. Let's get them.
At 5 a.m. each morning, Special Agent Coffey begins his day by reviewing the reports of all the area car thefts from the night before. He looks for the one that matches their suspect's MO.
Take a look at it.
If the suspect stole a car, the task force needs to identify it before banks open at 9.
Take a look at it.
But months pass with no sign of their suspect. Investigators begin to worry that the killer has gone underground and may never be caught.
We assume he's obviously stressed at this particular point. He's feeling the heat of the notoriety of what he's done.
October 9th, 1992.
Special Agent Coffey.
8 months after the killer's most recent slaying, I get notification from our Baltimore agents that another carjacking has taken place. We've got a white male with a ski mask, latex gloves, and a handgun. It's taken place all the way up in Baltimore.
At approximately 7 a.m., a 15-year-old girl walked to her mother's car. Suddenly, an armed man approached her and demanded the keys.
Pick him up or I'll kill you, you stupid.
A housing police officer heard this and came to her aid.
Get away from the car! Get away from the car! Get away from the car! Get away from the car!
There was an exchange of gunfire. And the carjacker took her vehicle and fled the scene.
Gentlemen, we have our car. It's a black Honda Civic.
We were feeling very good because we had very, very fresh information, and we knew he was on the move, and he was in Baltimore and more than likely on the way back here.
The task force determines there is no need to wait for a bank robbery.
Based on that information, the task force casts the net around the Washington metro area, hoping that he's going to come back through that net.
Patrolmen and SWAT units from jurisdictions throughout Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia race to prearranged locations on freeway exit ramps to watch for the stolen car. Since police cannot be sure if the suspect has had time to switch the license plates, they pull over every vehicle matching its description. time. They know they may face a shooter who has already taken 4 lives.
Let me see your hands. See your hands. Driver, walk back. Driver, open the door slowly.
The FBI and police departments throughout the Washington, D.C. area hunt a suspected killer. They stop every vehicle matching the description of the one they believe he stole an hour earlier. Police pull over dozens of cars, but come up empty.
What's going on?
You got a girl.
As the search continues, 50 miles away in western Maryland, Brunswick police officer Gary Klein is on routine patrol.
I observed a small black and color passenger vehicle. I saw that there was no front license plate on it. And as the vehicle passed me, I looked over and observed the driver had a nylon stocking pulled down over his face. Kind of shocked me, and I was like, not really sure what's going on here, but kind of drew my attention real quick. I turned around, called back up to the car, radioed my dispatchers and the 911 center, and requested information on the tag. And the subject in the small black car sped off and wouldn't pull over for me. Then I'm informed by our dispatchers that this subject is wanted for shooting at a Baltimore City officer.
The hundreds of officers mobilized in the D.C. area are too far away to assist. Officer Klein is alone against a ruthless killer.
The adrenaline's pumping now because I'm pursuing this vehicle, knowing somewhere in there I'm going to have to confront this individual. The speeds that we maintain in some places were 90 mile per hour to a little over 100 mile per hour.
Officer Klein chases the suspect from Maryland into Virginia.
He was very intent on getting away from me.
Dispatcher, we're getting ready to go right on Interstate 71.
He just went straight down the middle of the bridge, just forcing people east and westbound out of his way. I had to back off because I didn't want to endanger myself or the innocent people or citizens out on the street, where he was actually able to gain a good bit of distance on me. But once the roadway cleared up a little bit where I could safely get through the vehicles, I was able to catch back up to him.
Klein pursues the suspect into West Virginia.
Made a right off Route 340, and he went down this small asphalt road, and when he hit that, he was going too fast with the rain and everything and lost control and struck the curb. Stepped out of the vehicle with my weapon drawn, and I seen him kind of lean over in the car towards the passenger seat, and I seen the gun come up inside the car.
Officer Klein is concerned about firing his gun in a public place.
When you discharge your weapon, you just don't want a round just going out there somewhere, and you could strike somebody innocent. You have a split second to make this decision, and whatever decision you make can affect you for the rest of your life. At that point, he placed the car in reverse and sped backwards quickly towards my cruiser in what I believe was an attempt to ram my car or strike me. He proceeded down a small access road, and I proceeded after him. He sped into this little dead-end dirt gravel area, and he tried to go behind this bulldozer and wrecked into it. There's nowhere for him to go, and now I have to confront him. At that time, I see the gun coming up, which just kind of made my heart jump out of my chest.
While the suspect ducks for cover, Officer Klein strategically moves to his right.
You don't want to stay in one position, especially after he already knows where you're at.
Klein's tactic works. The suspect fires at the position where Klein used to be.
I actually fired more shots at him as he ran to get to the backside of his car for cover.
With backup units still minutes away, the lone officer fights to stay alive in a violent face-off with a vicious killer.
Let me see him. Put your...
The suspected killer is in a desperate shootout in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, with lone police officer Gary Klein.
I see him start to come up from behind his car through the passenger side window with the gun raised, and he's coming up. I remember firing at him and striking the car, and he ducked down behind the car again. Several seconds passed. He raises back up. You can hear it, the actual sound of the bullet striking the car, the metal, and he ducks back down behind the car again.
Finally, backup arrives.
When they put their hand on my shoulder and I knew who they were, it was this big relief. The burden was lifted off my shoulders because now I knew I had fellow officers there. Within the next 10 minutes, police officers from several jurisdictions were on the scene.
Come out from behind the car.
The gunman realizes he is outnumbered.
Then the suspect stood up and walked out in front of myself and my cruiser, probably about 15 yards, and put the gun to his head. And I continued to yell at him to drop the gun, to throw the gun on the ground, at which time he told me he wouldn't do that.
Listen, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
West Virginia State Police Corporal John Jeffries begins negotiating with the gunman.
We can work through this. Let me help. The only thing we've done so far...
After several minutes of negotiation, the suspect then pulled the nylon stocking up on the top of his head. Still wasn't able to really get a good, clear look at him.
The suspect begins to talk. He says he's an unemployed house painter.
He said that he was just upset. He had had some relation problems with his girlfriend, that he had done some things he wasn't real happy about, and just all these things had piled up and just troubled him, and he didn't know why he was doing the things he was doing.
After a 45-minute standoff, the gunman makes an unusual demand.
I remember him saying he wanted to talk to his mother. So he gave his mother's name and phone number.
Several tense minutes pass as police attempt to reach the suspect's mother.
He advised the suspect that they had his mother on the phone.
The woman on the line asks the negotiator for the suspect's name.
He identified himself as Alan Newman. He wasn't real sure of the police. He didn't know if we were just lying to him or what we were doing. He said, well, ask my mom what my favorite cookie is. I remember Corporal Jeffries saying, your mom said your favorite cookie is chocolate chip. And he started crying. It really shocked me because I thought he was just going to drop the gun and give up. You see the hammer coming back and everything's like slow motion. You see the hammer drop, you're waiting for the gun to go off. And it didn't.
Seizing the opportunity, officers rush in and subdue the gunman, ending the standoff.
After it was all over and done, very relieved, very appreciative of all of the guys that were there that day. I was able to help to get this person off the street and put him where he needed to be so that nobody else would be hurt.
Police take Alan Newman into custody and confiscate his Ruger 357 as evidence. It is the same model used in the murders, according to FBI Special Agent Robert Coffey.
From the prior ballistics, we knew what type of gun it would be. It would have been a specific Ruger make, and in fact, that's what he was carrying. The same types of bullets that were used in the shootings and the homicides were, in fact, still in the weapon.
You have told us that over and over.
After nearly a year of hard work, investigators finally meet the killer face to face.
We no longer have someone running throughout the counties killing people for cars. We were very excited about getting the chance to talk to the individual to find out why.
Go ahead, take it.
While Newman admits to the Baltimore carjacking, he refuses to admit to any of the murders, according to homicide detective Ed Day.
You don't have anything on.
Throughout the interview process, he remained pretty cocky and he thought he was pretty cool.
Investigators continue to press Newman. While at a firearms laboratory, a ballistics expert fires Newman's gun into an 800-gallon tank of water. The examiner compares the unique markings on the fired bullet to those on the bullets recovered from the 4 murders and the attempted homicide. Ballistics expert Joe Capera.
It is a scientific certainty that this is the firearm that fired these bullets, and no other firearm could possibly do that.
You want to hear it again?
After hours of interrogation, investigators receive the ballistics report.
That's like the magic piece of evidence, and that's the one that you really knew would seal the whole case. We had physical, undeniable evidence that we could put in front of a jury that he could not refute in any way, shape, or form. We could convict him without much trouble, and we could have gotten the death sentence with the information that we had, which put it over the top, and he decided it was best to make a deal for life rather than take the chance on being executed.
Alan Newman pleads guilty to all the charges against him and is sentenced to 5 life terms without parole, plus 100 years for handgun violations.
Looking back, it was the collective efforts of more than a dozen police agencies contributing interviews and evidence that led to the successful conclusion of this case.
The accomplishment for all police officers and all investigators is to arrest the bad guy and put him in jail. And when you do that, you get a nice warm feeling for about 10 minutes until the next case comes in and you have to start all over again.
But for now, every investigator who worked this case is content to know they have ended one man's violent rampage. Robbery, torture, murder. A drug cartel will do anything to protect their business, no matter who's caught in the crossfire. The FBI and NYPD work together to fight back, risking their own lives by going undercover to unlock the secrets of deadly drug gangs, to bring them down from the inside.
Hands up!
When the streets of New York flooded with crack cocaine in the 1980s, a wave of violence threatened to drown the city. Colombian cartels brought the coke in and ran their operations with an iron fist. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Agents somehow had to infiltrate a complex crime ring, protected by a code of silence. Going head-to-head with killers, any misstep would be fatal.
Crack cocaine. Cheap, easy to make, and highly addictive. When it hits the streets, violent crime follows. Most of the bloodshed occurs at the street level, among users and dealers. But innocent people suffer too. NYPD detective Richard Eppolito worked narcotics.
This one gentleman that owned a Chinese restaurant came out one night, and there was a couple of individuals involved in drugs, and they'll do anything they can do to get their next fix. Well, this particular gentleman had gold teeth, and they thought nothing of killing him. They just shot him dead, and while he's down on the ground, they pulled out their switchblades and they started prying his teeth out.
In New York, the crack epidemic began in the late 80s. NYPD Lieutenant Mike Garrity.
It was an extremely violent time. You had turf wars. You had people who just controlled a certain corner. If you set up to make a sale on that corner, there'd be a drive-by shooting. We were losing our youth. We were losing innocent bystanders to drive-bys. Every one of the index crimes went up. It was out of control back then.
But arresting users and dealers individually does little to slow the onslaught.
You know, it's never ending. It's just a constant flow. For every one or two guys you take down, there's others to replace them.
The only way to stem the flow of narcotics is to find the organizations that import the drugs and dismantle them. To do this, the Department of Justice creates the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. Known as C-13, the task force is made up of NYPD detectives and FBI agents. They know exactly who they're up against, according to Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
In New York in the early 90s, the situation was that you had Colombians in control of the drug trade.
The two main drug gangs are Colombia's Medellin and Cali cartels. When the cartels ship drugs into the country, they smuggle them in by packing them among valid cargo, according to U.S. Customs Special Agent Phil Spinelli.
With containerized cargo, you can conceal the narcotics in just about any type of cargo that you ship into the United States. They've liquefied narcotics and tried to put it into bottles. They've disguised it as dominoes. They've put it into cans of guava paste and cans of peaches where the peaches were completely sealed.
And they ship it in through New York City, one of the busiest ports in the world.
In the New York area, we receive approximately 5,000 containers a day. Each of those containers probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 18, 20, maybe 30,000 pounds of cargo. So it's extremely difficult. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
When the drugs hit New York, they are distributed across the country. The task force is determined to shut off this supply of drugs and break the backs of the cartels.
Our purpose in the task force was to build cases, try to monitor these individuals, try to infiltrate them, and take them down.
To do so, Detective Eppolito immerses himself undercover in the shadowy world of drug traffickers, and he needs help.
The most productive cases involve confidential informants because they know what's going on. They're already on the inside.
Once the detective develops trust with an informant, doors begin to open.
I had one particular confidential informant that was extremely reliable.
In December 1991, the informant tells Eppolito about a man named Eduardo. He says Eduardo deals in cloned cell phones and might be connected to the Medellin cartel. He knows the Colombian cartels desperately want to do business with the American mafia.
They felt traditional organized crime was here a long time. They know all the ins and outs, all the tricks. They have all the contacts. And that's basically what they were looking for.
This could be the opportunity Eppolito's been looking for to get inside the cartel. He decides to go undercover, posing as a member of the mafia in an effort to orchestrate a large-scale drug purchase from the cartel. The detective asks the informant to set up a meeting with Eduardo and introduce him as Tony Romano, his undercover identity. The informant goes to Eduardo and tells him about Tony Romano. Eduardo seems interested in a mafia connection and agrees to meet. But he warns the informant, if it's a setup, there'll be hell to pay. Undercover work is among the most dangerous assignments an officer takes up. If he's identified as a cop, he and his informant will likely be killed. Every meeting is scripted so the undercover knows what to say and what to avoid.
An undercover operation is a carefully orchestrated deal. We just don't send the undercover out there. He doesn't operate in a vacuum. What we do, we have pre-meets before we go out. We have tack plans. We go over things. We try to cover every scenario that possibly could happen. And when we decide to go out, the safety of the undercover is paramount. We have people that are assigned strictly to watch the undercover, provide security for them. You try to control the meet location. You're going to pick a location that you're somewhat familiar with.
C-13 decides to have Eppolito meet Eduardo in a local bar.
We set up outside, we surveilled, them arriving and going in, but we also sent agents and detectives, inside.
The key is never appearing too anxious.
It was best not to jump right into the drugs, because a lot of times when you do that, they raise up on you. And they think you're the cops or the feds, and they back off. So I figured I'd start off small, start off low, and try to do some cellular fraud business with this guy.
Eppolito suggests a deal for cloned cell phones, reprogrammed phones that use an unwitting customer's service for free. He says he needs them for his mob activities.
And I also told him that I don't want to jump right into the drug aspect because I don't know who you are. So let's do this, and if we both come out of it okay, we can move on. So a little bit of psychology there.
Eduardo agrees to clone the phones for a price. After the meet, Eppolito debriefs the task force. By now, intelligence agents have uncovered more details about the drug dealer.
Eduardo was considered like a street dealer or a mule. He wasn't well placed within any organization. He's a guy that would broker deals, try to hook you up with somebody, stuff like that. He definitely wasn't our main focus in this whole investigation. We wanted to use him as a stepping stone to go higher up or go up the ladder.
Claiming he's satisfied with the cloned phone deal, Eppolito takes the case to the next level. He sets up another deal with Eduardo, this time for drugs. The detective has to maintain his mobster image.
You basically have to show credibility. You have to be able to convince the people that you're who you say you are. In doing so, it means you have to walk the walk, talk the talk.
Authorities need to play it cool. They don't want to order too much cocaine right away, which could tip Eduardo off.
In fact, that's a red flag. So what we decided to do was just order a small amount. So 1 kilogram of cocaine is what we ordered from Eduardo.
Eduardo comes through with a single kilo. A good sign he may be connected to a cartel. Undercover officers follow Eduardo after the deal. They need to determine if the man's really connected to a cartel. Someone who can lead them up the chain of command, or just another small-time dealer who cannot help further the investigation.
Nobody knows, first of all, if in fact we really do have a narcotics smuggling organization. There seems to be hints of it, there seems to be smoke, and what we're trying to do is see if in fact there is a fire there.
Investigators spot a man and a woman who might be associated with Eduardo going in and out of a house. Hopefully, authorities can ID the pair later. This sort of meticulous and time-consuming work is required to gather intelligence and build a case against the cartels who operate under a strictly enforced code of silence. The C-13 task force also checks the purity percentage of the cocaine Eduardo sold them.
It was extremely high quality. It was in the high 90s, which was like telling you that you're basically into the source, which is what we needed.
Pure cocaine means no middlemen have cut it down yet. It looks like Eduardo is a good lead into the cartels.
At that point, we realized that we had somebody that could possibly take us to the types of individuals, of drug traffickers, that the task force was geared to target.
It's the first milestone in what will be a long and dangerous investigation. In 1991, New York's C-13 task force tries to infiltrate a Colombian drug cartel, beginning with a low-level broker named Eduardo. After one successful cocaine buy, Eduardo asks undercover detective Richard Eppolito to meet the drug dealers Eduardo represents.
So he orchestrated a meet with a female individual known as, her street name was Monica. They would never give anybody their real name for fear they would be identified.
As with every meet, backup agents cover Eppolito. They recognize Monica as the woman seen at the house Eduardo entered after the first buy.
When I was introduced to Monica, it just meant stepping up one extra step in a ladder.
Eppolito must constantly maintain the charade. In character as Tony Romano, a member of the Mafia. He explains he has connections in customs and can move shipments through the ports. Agents spot a man watching the meet. They realize he's the other person seen at the house, Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
Colombians, as sophisticated as they were, oftentimes would conduct counter-surveillance. This was, a standard operating procedure for them. So we were wary of individuals that could be looking out to, for law enforcement.
It's a preliminary meeting. No real decisions are made. But Monica appears interested. She wants to meet again to discuss details with her partner, Willie. When she and Eduardo leave, backup tails them to ID Monica's car. Later, in an effort to ID her, the task force has a uniformed officer conduct a routine traffic stop on the car. The driver is the man who watched the meet in the restaurant. The officer gets IDs on the pair. The man is Gustavo Valencia, and Monica's real name is Rocio Londaño. Investigators run the names and discover both are involved with Colombian cartels, the vicious worldwide leaders of the drug trade. With this information, the C-13 task force opens an official federal conspiracy case and brings in U.S. Customs. From the reports, Customs agent Phil Spinelli confirms Valencia's street name is Willie.
Willie had been identified as being at least a distant cousin of Pablo Escobar, who was the head of the major cartel at that time.
Escobar runs the Medellin cartel, the most violent gang in the history of Colombian drug trade. He offers bounties on the heads of Colombian police officers, maintaining power by killing whoever crosses him. Since Willie's related to Escobar, the C-13 investigation takes on new urgency. They might now be able to take the investigation all the way to the Colombian kingpin. Lieutenant Mike Garrity.
Ideally, in any investigation, you take it from point A to point Z. And that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to get from the lowest level to the highest level. And once we met Willie with his connections, we figured we were right on target during the course of this investigation.
While undercover, Eppolito is constantly under the threat of death. He can never slip out of character. Tony Romano, the role he is playing, supposedly knows how the ports work, but Eppolito doesn't. In order to maintain his disguise, customs agents must give the detective a crash course on international transportation.
It was extremely important for Richie to be knowledgeable about the ports. You have to remember, what Richie is posing as is a wise guy, a member of a mafia family. He's also purporting to have connections down at the piers, so he can guarantee the safe passage of the narcotics through customs. The only way he can convince Willie and Monica of this is to have enough knowledge of the inner workings of the pier, so when he explains to them how he intends to carry out the caper, it will be believable. It will be true. It will be accurate.
Because the cartels are sophisticated enough to run their own background checks, the task force creates a full identity for the fictitious Tony Romano, complete with a long criminal record. Everyone working the case knows how important it is to hide Eppolito's true identity. They recall that in February 1985, decorated DEA Special Agent Enrique Camarena was ID'd as law enforcement by the Mexican drug gang he infiltrated. Gang members kidnapped him, tortured him, then stabbed him to death. The C-13 task force wires Eppolito to get incriminating conversations on tape. They are all aware that if Eppolito is discovered, it could be a death sentence. In previous meetings, no one has patted him down. But that could change.
In this type of work, it's very easy to explain them finding a gun on you. I mean, that's part of doing business. You're gonna have a gun on you. But it's extremely difficult to try to explain that little wire sticking up tape to your chest.
Above all, Eppolito has to become his character fully to reduce suspicion.
And I had to dress like the wise guys. I had to talk like the wise guys. I had to have a flashy car. I had to have the jewelry.
Soon Eppolito meets Willie. As he moves up the organization ladder, the criminals become more savvy. It gets tougher to fool them.
We're talking about people doing a substantial period of time in jail if caught. Therefore, everybody has a sixth sense. Their very existence depends on whether or not they have a sixth sense or an antenna that goes up. And they're there to question Richie. They're there to make some determination. Is he somebody who is reliable, dependable, and can they do business with him?
There they are.
The task force listens in and covers Eppolito.
And they're basically your buddies, too. They don't want to see you get hurt. So it's a good feeling knowing that there are guys there to back you up.
The task force slowly makes its way toward the heart of the cartel, knowing that at any moment, a single mistake could be deadly. Undercover Detective Richard Eppolito, posing as a mafioso named Tony Romano, meets with Colombian drug cartel members. He's backed up by other members of the C-13 task force, some of whom act as mafia bodyguards. Eppolito tells suspects Monica and Willie that if they can get the cocaine to the New York docks, he can move it past customs into his secure warehouse for distribution.
I knew you would get into something.
Customs agent Phil Spinelli.
That was very appealing to the Colombians because they need somebody to pick up these containers full of narcotics at the piers.
After the meeting, undercover agents follow the suspects. They note an interesting aspect of Colombian drug traffickers, according to Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
They took a low-key approach. Colombians did not drive around in Mercedes-Benzes and Porsches and flashy, expensive vehicles. They didn't dress particularly in an expensive way. They didn't particularly wear expensive jewelry, a lot of gold and so forth. They made every effort to remain low-key, and we saw that with Monica and Willie.
From additional sources, investigators developed more intelligence on the couple.
Was believed that they had loads in the past entrusted to them that had been lost. And therefore they lost favor, they lost money, and they were obligated to the cartels.
When Willie and Monica lost the drugs, the cartels made one thing very clear. Make good on the debt or die. That pressure should help move the task force's case forward.
Of course, the people that are indebted to the cartel are looking to get out of debt with the cartel and are willing to take more chances to hopefully make a bigger score to be able to get even.
Through Monica and Willie, investigators expand the investigation and pierce the cartel's secret world, according to Detective Eppolito.
One of the goals was to establish enough probable cause to get court-ordered wiretaps to further enhance the case, gather intelligence, basically know what the bad guy's going to do before they actually do it.
Because the couple discussed drug trafficking with Eppolito, investigators have no trouble getting warrants to tap their phones. The task force uses the taps to determine if the cartel believes Eppolito is who he says he is.
They felt free talking on the phones. They would discuss a lot of their arrangements, what they had in mind, what they wanted to do, the big mafioso that they met.
On tape, Monica and Willie tell their cartel contacts that Tony Romano is a safe bet.
We could listen to their calls they were making to Colombia, discussing the meeting they just had with him, and we were able to gather insight that you would not be able to gather otherwise into what their thinking was.
The cartel has taken the bait and is ready for the next step. They send another higher associate to meet with the mafioso.
There's also a female that came into the picture named Margola. She was very attractive, Colombian national. She was the niece of a notorious drug dealer out there who they used to refer to as Ivan the Terrible. He was responsible for the deaths of approximately 19 national police officers.
The task force knows Ivan the Terrible specializes in killing cops. Usually in a torture chamber he had built at his compound in Bogota, Colombia. Eppolito must continue playing his role and needs to convince Magola that he's a mafia wise guy or risk being killed. And he's the perfect cop to do it.
He grew up with some, quote, mob people. He knew how they acted. He had the looks. He knew the way to act. He knew the way to dress. And you give Richie a little bit of leeway. You give him a script and he could play the role to a T, and he was absolutely excellent in playing his role.
Eppolito notices one of Magola's associates has a gun and must decide whether to call for help from backup. He takes the risk and stays in character. He doesn't want to blow the case. Backup knows what to do if anyone gets suspicious of them.
Is that possibly somebody is making us? What we would do is probably step a little bit further back from the set. So they would think that to a certain extent they are seeing ghosts, where in fact there were no ghosts.
In the end, it appears Magola believes Tony Romano can provide a safe route for drug running. Slowly, the task force makes its way deeper into the cartel.
We were piecemealed individuals. First we met Eduardo, then we met Monica, then we met Willie, then it was Margolis. They kept introducing different people. The way it works, those people would report back to the people back in Colombia, and they'd say what's going on.
It seems to be going well. But Eppolito can never let down his guard. He is in constant danger. If the cartel suspects anything, they could send assassins and hit Eppolito at any time, not just at a meeting.
They could wait, get you at a later time, let you think everything's okay. Next time you show up, you get one in the back of the head. I feel very uppity, very alert. It's just natural adrenaline, I guess, that kicks in. There's a bit of excitement involved. It's challenging. It's dangerous.
Any mistake could mean another murder of a dedicated law enforcement officer. New York investigators try to infiltrate Pablo Escobar's Medellin drug cartel and dismantle it. As the case builds, the C-13 task force puts more resources into it, including an office for undercover detective Richard Eppolito's mafia character.
We also had an undercover office in Floral Park, Queens. And it was wired for both video and audio to document meets and gather evidence.
It's the best place for monitored meetings, according to Lieutenant Mike Garrity.
We were able to bring the people there. We were able to record the conversations. We were able to videotape every one of these conversations.
When Monica and Willie show up to the office for a meeting, they're watched the entire time. FBI Special Agent Mary Setzer acts as Eppolito's receptionist.
We met in the office approximately 2 or 3 times a month. My responsibilities were to answer the door when the subjects arrived, announce them to the undercover, and then usher them into the office.
She's there for protection, but she's also part of the act.
Richie frequently tried to ease the tension by making fake phone calls to me from the office during his meetings. He would pick up the telephone and say, "Make sure that order arrives tomorrow. Get that fax out."
It's all done to convince the cartel members the detective is actually Tony Romano.
You have to establish credibility with these people. If you say who you are somebody, you have to show them, you have to prove it. So we set up this operation to bring them there and put them at ease. Plus it served as a meeting place. It was out of the view of the public. They felt secure, they felt safe.
It's a slow process as the task force orchestrates a complex fraud against wary adversaries. Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
These were savvy people. These were people that were involved in drug trafficking for many years in Colombia and elsewhere outside of Colombia in furtherance of the cartel's major worldwide distribution effort. Throughout the whole investigation, we were always concerned that, there would be a slip-up, that something inappropriate would be said, or perhaps that surveillances would be made that would give the whole thing up.
If the cartel ever suspects anything, they would likely kill Eppolito and his informant. On rare days off, Eppolito needs a reason he can't meet Monica and Willie. He tells them he often goes to Atlantic City to tend to the mafia business there. Eventually, Monica and Willie ask to see the Atlantic City operation. Eppolito's got a problem. He has no real business in Atlantic City. The team scrambles to create an elaborate ruse that will trick the drug dealers.
Took them all to Atlantic City. That's another credibility thing. They wanted to see where I spent my weekends, where I hung out. So we took them to the casinos. The Jersey State Police were very instrumental on setting up the casinos where I could, walk in like I was a big shot. We could comp them. We got them rooms. We dined like kings and queens.
Backup is all around. The entire undercover operation is carefully scripted, and nothing is left to chance. The task force wants the cartels to see everything they need to see to believe Eppolito is a mafioso. They even send in an undercover officer to act as a mafia captain and ask the informant for a meeting with Eppolito.
The informant talked to Richie. Richie walked away, but in clear view of the other participants. The other individual, as prearranged, threw his arms around Richie, greeted him, kissed him on both cheeks, and he handed him an envelope with a wad of money. And Richie sent him on his way, walked back to the table, pulled out the wad of money in the envelope, leaped through it, put his back, and Richie complained that he's always working. Even in Atlantic City, he can't catch a break. And these people were totally impressed with this.
But the cartel needs more convincing. They send an interrogator to meet with Eppolito. His street name is Sammy, and he specializes in finding undercover cops.
Sammy was somebody, he was a wild card that was introduced to the investigation. He was, an enforcer, somebody that apparently, was capable of, determining whether somebody was, a law enforcement officer, obviously.
The room is fully wired, and agents watch from an office in the hotel. In touch with backup stationed near the room. They must protect Ippolito, but they can't move too soon.
You have to make a decision basically in a split second. And if you make the wrong decision in a case like this, let's say to move in, you could blow maybe about a year's worth of investigation. Now, if you move too slow, you could lose an undercover.
Sammy starts the interrogation.
I didn't pat him at the door to see if he was armed or not, but a lot of these guys are armed and you gotta be careful. And I had to make sure I came up with the right answers because if we had any inclination that I was either a bad guy looking to rip him off or law enforcement, I mean, God knows what might have happened.
Ippolito knows backup is there, but it's still a tense situation.
There's always a signal that's set up between you and the backups in case something goes wrong, or a code word. And, you let loose with the signal or the code word, they just take the whole thing down.
Several times, Sammy hints that he thinks Ippolito's trying to trick them.
We were extremely close there. We could have got in there in a couple of seconds, but those couple of seconds could have meant life or death. So it is a gut-wrenching situation.
As Sammy continues to press Ippolito, agents fear that one wrong answer could destroy the entire investigation, and Detective Ippolito would be killed. Undercover Detective Richard Ippolito faces off against an interrogator from Pablo Escobar's drug cartel, a man known only as Sammy. He demands details of Ippolito's past crimes to prove he really is a mafioso.
People have you killed?
Agents watch the meet, ready to send in backup.
At some point during the interrogation process, I felt I had to put a stop to it before either I said something that I couldn't back or the informant. And I basically stood up. I told him, I says, listen, I says, do you really expect me to tell you everything I've done? Do you expect me to tell you the people I've killed? The people I've dealt drugs with? I says, for all I know, you could be a cop, you could be an agent. I says, I told you what I'm going to tell you.
You don't want to work
The detective takes a risk, in character as Tony Romano, demanding more respect.
I says, here's my hand. Either you feel comfortable with me, or it's a pleasure meeting you, and I'll take my business elsewhere.
The tension rises.
And he got all upset. He walked off to the side, talking to them. There was some hollering and screaming in Spanish, of course, which I didn't understand.
Sammy and the others might be planning something violent, but Ippolito can't back down now.
You can't show that you're intimidated or afraid of them. I mean, that's the worst thing. You got to come on just as strong or even stronger than they do at times.
Detective Mike Garrity is seconds away, but seconds might be too late.
We were getting ready to move in, but Richie handled it excellent. He was able to get out of it.
Watch post 1-1, all units stand down, everything's okay.
Finally, Sammy decides Ippolito is the real thing.
He came back, smiled, shook my hand, and said, we'll be doing business.
Once again, the detective has conned the criminals. Customs agent Phil Spinelli.
It's all part of being an undercover. It's all part of being able to act calmly under pressure. And Richie, of course, being the pro he is, handled it very well.
Before the drug traffickers leave Atlantic City, Sammy decides to test the informant, according to Supervisory Special Agent Fernando Llanos.
All of the subjects asked the source to go to one of their rooms to talk to him. And fortunately, we had an adjacent room, and we're able to listen in to the conversation.
The informant is a civilian, not law enforcement, and might not hold up to the pressure of the interrogation. Agents watch as Sammy tries to get the informant to double-cross Tony Romano. He pushes hard.
Got a little heated at times. The backup teams thought they were going to have to go crashing through the door and rescue the informant and just basically take the case down at that point.
It's a big case, but not worth a man's life.
You have to take calculated risks, and this was another instance where we needed to do that. Can we respond quickly enough? Can we get into the room if this man whips out a gun, or a knife and puts it to our source's throat?
The informant refuses to betray the powerful mafioso.
He says, his people will kill me. Quicker than that. He says, I could never do anything to betray him or the family. And when he said that, they respected him. And they saw he wasn't going to betray me, so I guess they felt he had a certain amount of integrity. And he wouldn't be that much of a risk factor for them as well. And they broke open a bottle of champagne in the room, and they celebrated. And
another possible crisis averted.
It could have been the end of the investigation, or the end of the informant if they had decided to kill him.
It seems like endless meetings. But this level of caution is how the cartels grew so powerful.
You're dealing with formidable adversaries. I mean, there was a lot of negotiations before we got down to the fine movements of getting the drugs from Colombia over to here.
As the investigation deepens, the next step up the ladder is Hernando Sanchez-Eneo, a high-level cartel member. He suggests going beyond a single shipment and opening a new drug pipeline into the U.S., a marriage of the Colombian cartels and the American mafia.
We gave them the opportunity to move a product without law enforcement interceding from the pier to one of our warehouses. So in effect, what we did, we provided one-stop shopping for this organization, and they loved it.
The addition of Hernando means the C-13 task force is moving deeper into Escobar's cartel.
It was a feather in our cap to get him involved in this particular thing, and more we knew we were getting closer and closer to the source.
With a warrant, investigators tap Hernando's phones. To protect Eppolito, they route calls through a secure Atlantic City phone number to his New York home. During one call, Hernando asks Eppolito to come to Colombia with him to inspect a cocaine shipment. It's too dangerous for Eppolito to go. It would be like walking into the lion's den. And the task force would be unable to protect him. But if he backs out, the cartel may grow suspicious and kill him. Undercover detective Richard Eppolito was working to bring down the powerful Medellin drug cartel. Hernando Sanchez-Eneo wants him to accompany him to Colombia to inspect a cocaine shipment. The detective must get out of the trip. It's too dangerous. His team could not protect him on foreign soil. Thinking quickly, he tells Hernando he can't leave his mob business unattended, and hopes he doesn't suspect anything.
I mean, one of two things could happen. They could just walk away from you and never have anything to do with you again. Or depending on how far you are into their group or organization, how much you do know, your life could be at risk.
Eppolito gets a break. Hernando falls for the story. The task force continues to follow the suspects to ID more associates. Investigators watch as Hernando meets with a man identified as Mauro Trujillo, a high-level cartel member who's been wanted by the DEA for narcotics trafficking and money laundering. Agents want to grab him, but they don't want to blow the current investigation, so they wait. As Eppolito gets deeper into the deadly cartel, the danger increases.
There's a high risk factor. Some nights they didn't go home. If I did go home, I would have to do it in such a way where I made sure I wasn't being followed.
Finally, as the new year passes, Eppolito learns the shipment is on its way. But there's a change of plans. Instead of the cocaine, Hernando says they're sending a test load. 9.5 tons of marijuana. In character as Tony Romano, the detective acts upset at the change. But it's a big load, and would be the evidence they need to bring the operation to a close.
It was a heck of a test load. Normally, we hadn't seen anything like that. Test loads were like 1 or 2 kilos. See if it gets seized, goes onto the street, and let's see what happens.
The task force can't let that amount of drugs on the street. When the load arrives at the New York docks, undercover investigators transport it directly to Eppolito's warehouse. The investigators need to check the container's contents. But there's a seal on its door to ensure no one has opened it. It's a common practice in international shipping. Agents need to find a way to get inside and keep the seal intact. U.S. Customs Agent Phil Spinelli.
What they were able to do is to detach the door without breaking the seal.
At first, it looks like a normal shipment of clothing. Stashed behind the shirts, marijuana. Literally tons of it.
We recovered somewhere in the neighborhood of about 272 cartons or crates containing 19,000 pounds of marijuana valued in excess of $22 million.
They're definitely dealing with a major cartel.
It's not easy to put together 9.5 tons of marijuana. These people had the resources to do all this. These were bad guys, major violators. They, they plagued this country with this stuff, and they just needed to be taken down and bring a halt to their operation.
For prosecution, the C-13 task force needs the suspects to complete the transaction and accept the shipment. Eppolito invites them to the warehouse.
And of course, there was video and surveillance equipment in place. We had one of my workers come with a big bolt cutter and cut the seal on the back of the container. And I handed them the seal. I said, "Here's a souvenir for you." And they could see that the load was sealed. It wasn't tampered with. It got here in one piece. And I happened to have an Italian switchblade on me, by the way. I cut it open, and they examined it, and they were happy. They saw it was the stuff they had sent over, and they also wanted to take some back with them.
But Eppolito can't let the drugs hit the street, and uses the cartel's unplanned switch from cocaine to marijuana to his advantage.
I said, now you screwed me, and this is basically how it's going to go. You're going to do what I tell you to do. I want those 5,000 kilos here. When I get my drugs, then you get your marijuana.
The suspects panic. They are desperate to take control of the drugs. Shockingly desperate.
Monica actually offered up her baby to me as a form of collateral and good trust.
It's a stunning move no one expects.
Fear comes across when you hear stories like that. The reason being is that if she's willing to give her child up to this unknown criminal figure, what would she have done to myself or any member of the investigative team if in fact she found out we were law enforcement, or if in fact she found out that Richie in reality was an undercover police detective? It sends a couple of chills up your spine.
Eppolito stands firm. He will not release the marijuana until the cocaine he ordered comes through. The cartel members finally agree and plan to meet later. While C-13 plans arrests, Eppolito faces increased pressure from angry cartel members.
No, I can't do that. It got pretty heated during these latter meetings because they kept pressuring him to release the drugs, to release some of the marijuana so they could then sell it.
On February 3rd, 1993, more than a year after the investigation began, the arrest plans are finalized. The task force moves in. They start with Willie and Monica at Eppolito's office. By this time, the pair suspects nothing.
FBI, get your hands up! Get your hands up!
They were bewildered. They didn't know what was going on. Guys coming with shotguns, guns out, bulletproof vests on.
Then, the man they knew as Tony Romano emerges.
I went out there to speak to them and try to get them to cooperate. And I told them, I said, you know who I am? I'm the police. And I guess they felt betrayed and that I had deceived them, which I did, in the interest of justice. And Willie actually looked at me with tears in his eyes and he says, how could you do this to me? I said, well, Willie, I says, you come into this country, you bring this stuff, you destroy our people, our youth. I said, I'm a police officer, I'm a detective. I says, I'm here to uphold the law. I says, you broke the law. I said, you people are under arrest. And that was it, and I walked out of the room.
FBI agents, FBI agents.
Within 24 hours, C-13 arrests Hernando and 6 other co-conspirators. Magola is never found, having fled to Colombia. Eduardo, Monica, Willie, Hernando, Trujillo, and others are each charged with multiple counts of conspiracy to distribute narcotics. FBI Special Agent Mary Setzer.
They all pled guilty. However, Mauro Trujillo, also known as Restrepo, fled the country and left for Colombia. The FBI is looking for information regarding the whereabouts of Mr. Trujillo. If anybody has that information, they can call the New York office of the FBI at 212-384-1000.
More than a year of dangerous undercover work by the agents and officers of the C-13 task force helped cripple a drug cartel many thought was unstoppable.